For more on your Los Angeles Dodgers, we bring in a legend and a friend of the show. Buster Olney is a reporter for Sunday Night Baseball, working play-by-play with Matt Vasgersian. And, of course, Alex Rodriguez provide coverage on ESPN's exclusive National Game of the Week, where our Dodgers are playing the Chicago Cubs at Dodger Stadium this Sunday at 4 p.m. on ESPN. Welcome back to Blue Heaven. Friend of the show, Buster Olney, how are you doing on this fine day?
I'm doing great. It's been a fascinating week with all the foreign substance stuff going on.
Yeah, we'll get into that. We want to get a little bit of Dodgers out of you first, but yeah, the MLB stuff is you're absolutely the guy whose brain we want to pick a little bit on it. You got them inside sources and all that, and yeah, I'm sure you have your own thoughts on it. But first, right off the bat with the Dodgers, they're coming off a series where they get swept by the Padres. A little bit embarrassing the way that whole series transpired. What are your thoughts on just where the Dodgers are, really in your mind, where the Dodgers are at coming off of the series like that?
They're in a brawl. Look, I was among the people at the beginning of the year when I got off to a great start who was talking about how, this Dodger team had a chance to be one of the greatest teams, maybe the greatest team of all time, the way they were dominating. But let's face it, I mean, the injuries absolutely took them down. The Giants, I think, are now for real. I was talking with a Dodger official the other day who said every time he looks up, it's in the second inning and the Giants are winning 4-0. And I think that, early on when they started playing well, everyone was like, yeah, okay, well, that's not going to last. But all these one-year investments, Kevin Gossman being the biggest example of that, those guys look great. Mm-hmm. And as Joe Girardi, the Phillies manager, said, whatever you throw out there, the Giants have an answer for it. And we know that the Padres are good. So as we sit here today, the Dodgers are in the toughest divisional in baseball in the National League West. And it'll be very interesting to see as guys like Cody Bellinger come back, what exactly emerges from the team.
One of the big things we saw in this series was two very, very different, we'll say, types of baseball or levels of intensity from both teams. Last night, Trevor Bauer was, I wouldn't say outspoken, but he shared his thoughts that, San Diego looked like they were more in on the game. They had a lot more intensity, and the Dodgers saw that problem too when they played the Padres last year. Is this something where, in your mind, do the Dodgers maybe need to create a little more, manufacture a little more intensity when playing these type of teams where, let's be real, the Padres are very good, they're very young, they're flashy, and the Dodgers are ho-hum, we've been there before?
I think the Padres have absolutely demonstrated to the rest of baseball how even in this big, launch angle, home run, 3-true outcome time in the sport, that you can look for ways to get an extra 90 feet. There's no question. No team runs the bases like the Padres do. To me, if you're a fan of college basketball, it's like when you play the University of Virginia, how their defense is just at a different level than any other team. And they put different stresses on teams that are not accustomed to that type of intensity. Skip Schumacher is kind of like the offensive coordinator for that team in terms of running the bases and looking for opportunities. Does a phenomenal job. The players have all bought in. And if I were the Giants, if I were the Dodgers, if I were any team, and I'm watching the Padres, because it's not like, every guy on the Padres is fast, but every guy from Manny Machado on down has bought into the idea that you're looking for opportunities to take another 90 feet.
Yeah, that's something that we haven't quite seen in LA quite yet. Obviously, the running game's a little bit different here, but I think there's there's maybe a little bit broader of a problem. You're looking kind of down the road towards the end of the season, obviously, but the Dodgers are kind of backing themselves into a weird corner pitching-wise. Obviously, lose Dustin May, that changes things up, but also you add in the fact that Julio's, getting near his career high in innings pitched, even between minor leagues and major leagues. Do you think the Dodgers are now in an odd position where they might need to go out and get maybe another starter? Because at this point, Josiah Gray, who knows how far off he is? He hasn't even picked up a ball as of now, I think.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And look, if you look at Andrew Friedman's history, he was the guy who went and traded for Yu Darvish. He was the guy who went and traded for Manny Machado. He gave up what it was going to take to get Mookie Betts, and that history suggests that they'll do that again. I think a really interesting question is going to be, okay, how many good starting pitchers will actually be out there and available? It's nice to say the Dodgers need a starter, but are there actually going to be impact guys out on the market? 2 weeks ago, for example, we were all thinking, yeah, the Nationals at some point will become sellers and Max Scherzer will be available. Well, guess what? The Nationals have a say in that.
Right.
They've played better of late, and maybe Max isn't going to be traded. And is a guy like Kyle Gibson of the Texas Rangers, is he your answer? One thing, and I don't think anybody's ever going to know the answer to this, but I think the Dodgers, like all teams now, are also in this foreign substance crackdown, are doing a broader reassessment of their pitching staff.
Right.
In other words, they probably have information now on, okay, who was benefiting beforehand, and what are those guys now? And that's not an indictment. It's not a character judgment. I think it's just a fact in this post-crackdown world where all teams are looking at their staff and say, okay, what do we have really? And I'm sure that the Dodgers are probably doing some of that as well before they make their decisions about what to go and get.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a big impact on the game, and that's something we want to get into a little bit. But before we get into that rule change, there is something that popped up over the weekend. Dave Roberts, uncharacteristically, I don't know, I guess it's kind of in character, but also said, hey, I wouldn't mind doing away with the shift. And I think you can say that when you have Manny Machado playing rover and robbing base hits. It's a little easier to view it that way. But where do you think we are with the shifts in Major League Baseball right now?
Well, first off, that a change in the shift is not going to come until you get collaboration and productive work between Major League Baseball and the Players Association, and they got a lot of other stuff on their minds. They got the CBA that's up in December, but I absolutely believe something I never would have guessed 5 years ago, that there is going to be some sort of a regulation on shifts. The phrase that's been repeated to me over and over again is spikes in the dirt. Infielders, they want their spikes in the dirt, and they obviously talking about putting infielders assigned to one side or the other. Either they're going to be on the right side of the infield or left side of the infield. I think, Theo Epstein, who was the former head of baseball ops for the Chicago Cubs, now works for the commissioner's office. They're trying to find ways to get more action into the game. And people have complained about this generation of hitters who are trying to, lift the ball with launch angles. That's not going to happen until they feel like they're going to be rewarded for hitting the ball on the ground. And that's not going to happen until they get rid of shifts, which is why I do think that when we play baseball in 22, there's going to be some regulations regarding the shifts.
All right, let's get into the big one, the hot topic. We're, 3-4 days now into the post-sticky era. Rob Manfred says it's going very well so far. What's the real pulse around the league, and what are your thoughts on how this has gone, this transpired so far?
Yeah, and let's face it, when Rob is saying that, it's almost like he's in the character in Animal House. All is well! All is well! Because every night we're getting scenes of, Max Scherzer, screaming at Joe Girardi, or Sergio Romo ripping down his pants disgustedly because he's been asked to get checked. I would say this, that knuckleheads like me are going to focus on those volatile situations. Most of them are not like that. I mean, you guys have seen from Jacob deGrom, the first guy who was checked coming out with a sort of a bemused smile. Okay, what do you want to see? To Shohei Ohtani being that way. I think that most people that I speak with in sports say that generally it's going smoother than possible. I do think that potentially you could have a couple of adjustments with it. One, if at any point Major League Baseball feels like that the managers are challenging opposing pitchers for foreign substances, for gamesmanship, I think they probably will put in some kind of a rule restricting that. And the other thing, too, is, and I had some baseball people last couple of days pointing to the Romo situation where he ripped his pants down. We're saying, you know what, can we please use some common sense in this? If a pitcher has a bad outing, how about not checking him? Because if he was using foreign substance, trying to get a competitive advantage, it wasn't working.
Right.
So when we have those, those outings with a pitcher gives up 4 runs an inning, and you planned on checking him, maybe you could just let him go.
Yeah, I think there was the Phillies game where he gave up a grand slam and then on his way out got checked, and I can't imagine that's going to go over long term very well every single time. So that's a little dangerous one.
It definitely doesn't look overly pretty. All right, you already kind of mentioned it there. We got the Manfred side of things. We got he has a very different view in his mind of reality, we will say. I'm not going to get too much into it. we already see the relationship very strained between baseball, the league, the Players Association, the players, everybody that's in charge of each respective side, and we're coming up on this CBA that expires in December. I heard, I think it was Rich Eisen who said we got a nuclear winter coming ahead of us. What kind of fears do you have about baseball starting on time in 2022?
I think they're real. I know at the owners' meetings a couple weeks ago, the conversation among the owners was not whether or not there's going to be a lockout. It was when there's a lockout. What's the strategy after there's a lockout? Now, that might just be part of the saber rattling that goes on. You do wonder, that if, in fact, as we get closer to that December 1st deadline, if suddenly the Players Association will capitulate on a lot of fronts, as it did back in 2016, and make a deal. But I got to tell you guys, the relationship between the two sides is by far the worst that I've ever seen. And I covered a strike in 94, 95. And what makes it so bad is that these two sides don't even talk, which, there's some conversation. Sometimes it's through the umpires, but there's not a collaboration. This week, for example, with all the foreign substance stuff, you heard from Garrett Cole, you heard from Max Scherzer, Trevor Bauer has said this, where they basically say, the MLB is in so many words, forced this upon us, and this stinks. And I find it to be disingenuous to a large degree, because it's like, guys, if you want to talk to Major League Baseball, you have the opportunity. Just talk to your union. But they've made the choice to essentially not engage, and I don't understand why. I don't think it's working for them. I think baseball has, MLB has gotten more stubborn, and, the relationship is deteriorating on both sides. It absolutely stinks. The one thing the players, big picture, need to remember, which side has the bigger pile of money? If you think of it like a poker game, well, it's the owners. And I would not want to go into a neighborhood poker game where one guy's got $1 million at the table and the other side's got 1,000, because that's kind of what the dynamic is between the two, and we have a good idea which side would win that.
I got a pretty good idea, but I mean, Buster, we'll tell you if there is a lockout or anything like that, we are available as replacement players.
No, I will not. I will not be a scab. All right, it's against my inner core right there. All right, Buster. Dodgers, Cubs this weekend. You're there. Are you at the stadium this weekend? Finally.
Yeah, I've been traveling all season long. Matt Vescursion and Alex Rodriguez have been back in studio. They actually are going to be out and traveling for the first time next weekend when we get the Mets and the Yankees. But this weekend, it's the last time I'm going solo into a ballpark, and it should be. I'm excited about this. And I know it's headline-breaking news up here where I live in the Northeast, because the Red Sox and Yankees play on Sunday. We didn't pick their game. We picked Cubs and Dodgers, and that was a shock for a lot of people.
Hey, us on the West Coast, we appreciate that. Any opportunity to kill that East Coast bias that we've heard about for all these years. It's always a good thing. You got Urias going against Alec Mills. Interesting matchup. Urias is kind of on the down right now, and Alec Mills hasn't had the greatest 2021. What are in your notes? What are your game notes for Sunday? What's the preview of what we can hear on air?
Well, I think coming off that last start, the question about Urias is going to be his command, and because it certainly looked like that the last start he was uncomfortable, he was spraying the ball all over the place. What sort of adjustments is he going to make? And I don't say this as a character judgment. I just say as an observation. I think about 90-95% of pitchers were using some kind of foreign substance. I'm going to be really curious to see what adjustment he makes. And I suspect he's not the only one now who's trying to find a feel for the ball. But that last start, it wasn't very good. I'm also really curious about how quickly does Cody Bellinger get up to speed. You guys remember last year where he struggled for a long period of time, pretty much the entire regular season, and then he was good and got better during the postseason. After all the work he did on his swing during the offseason, I'm wondering how quickly he goes and finds it this year.
We hope sooner rather than later. It would be a good matchup tonight to get it done. Buster, before we let you go, we want to know, tell us everything that's going on, the latest rumblings with Baseball Tonight, the Baseball Tonight podcast. I know lately you get a lot of really big names on there, and people are going to want to hear about them.
Well, Alex Rodriguez actually did an interview for the first time. We've been teammates on Sunday Night Baseball for 3 years, and I always kidded him, hey, come on. But this week he sat down with me, via Zoom. And the thing about Alex is he's been involved in so much baseball history and so many big moments, and he's got an anecdotal memory. And so I was able to, draw on that and ask him, okay, when you had that fight with Jason Varitek, what happened then? And to find out that he and Jason Varitek haven't spoken since that fight, that was a surprise. You guys remember he was almost traded to the Red Sox in the winter of 2003, and he tells the story about when that deal fell apart. He was so upset that he went out. He doesn't drink, but he went out that night, got absolutely plowed, and was throwing up in the streets of New York. He has the greatest stories, and so it was really fun to draw some of that out of him, and that's out right now.
Awesome. That's definitely something for everybody to be checking out. I think that dropped today. We're recording as of Thursday, so it's available everywhere podcasts are sold for free. You can find that there. You can also find Buster on the Twitter at Buster_ESPN. Buster, we appreciate the time. We appreciate the insight. You're a true pros pro, and it's always fun talking to you.
Likewise, guys. I love your passion.